everybody, and welcome to the April 9th Trips and Traps. Andy Serling, Richard Migliore.
I really like the races we have, and we've kind of got the full array from cheaper claimers to grade ones. It's a good list of races.
Yeah, I think there's some good questions to try to answer, and we try to show as many different situations, race situations we can. And we're going to start out with one race that was run on Friday, then we'll go towards Saturday's Wood Memorial card. And this is one that a lot of people saw, but this is a classic situation with a one-by tee time where the rider, Richie, had to do one thing. And it's not always that easy. He did the first part well. He got out of the gate cleanly. You've got to go because your only real rival is on the far outside and has speed.
Well, and the fact of the matter is, when I was riding, if I had the rail on a horse that had speed and my main rival was speed, it took all the options away. You had to go. There was no confusion about it. It basically simplified things.
Yeah, I don't know why the rider, he was a little aggressive from the start, and then he was just sort of passive. You've got to go, man. You've got to send in there. And I can sort of close my eyes and envision you in the spot, and look what happens.
Well, he winds up inside of a 92-to-1 shot that you know is just going to get in your way. You can't afford to get in behind horses that are slower than you because it inhibits your horse's gait more and it takes more out of them. Now look where he is. He winds up getting shuffled back completely out of the race.
I mean, he's a good 8 lengths behind at that point. And what kind of chance did this horse have? These are cheaper claimers. I actually think she did fairly well to ride herself into the race. Had she just pushed along aggressively, I think she was going to win this race.
Yeah, I agree with you. And she had the opportunity. She broke well enough. And like you said, it appeared that Manny Franco, who I think's been riding well aside this race aside,
so do I,
needed to keep going forward. And when he didn't, he basically became a victim. And it's what I talk about a lot of times. When you're going to a turn, you have to have made a clear decision that you're going to hold your ground. Otherwise, the decision's made for you.
And as you said, the decision was made for him at the start because he had to go early. You know what? If he goes and he loses the race, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. I mean, he was victimized by his post, but when he broke, he was supposed to go. Now, here's the problem. This horse was claimed by a trainer, Loretta Lindemann. Now, we're not looking to knock her because, for all we know, she'll end up doing very, very well.
Sure.
I think this is about the 3rd horse that I've seen her claim. Maybe she's claimed some more. Even you're not familiar with her. We don't know who she is, and this horse goes from Bruce Levine. Can it be reasonable to expect this horse to run as well the next time?
Well, it's a great question because we really don't know. I mean, Bruce Levine is obviously a very accomplished guy, one of the best trainers around, and consistently over years. And here you have an unknown quantity. So it's a great question. I mean, off of this race, though, if this horse gets a clean trip, you'd have to think even on the raise, she's going to be tough.
And the other thing is, sometimes these horses go off ridiculously high prices because people are worried about the trainer, and the horse somewhat runs off of Bruce Levine's training. We'll see how quickly she comes back. But I got to tell you, as long as it's a reasonable field, one thing you know, this performance is a lot better than it looks on paper.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she was beaten 3.5 lengths for everything and probably had about 8 lengths worth of trouble.
She had a ton of trouble. It's hard to measure, but it certainly was a lot more than 3.5. We're going to go to a maiden race that was run on Saturday's card. This is the 3rd race, and we want to talk about 2 horses that end up finishing 6th and 7th. But the first thing to show, they are the 3 and 4 is the break, because the 2 is going to come out very badly at the start.
Yeah, the 2 is another first-time starter. Just veers out severely. And it's interesting. Most of the time, horses will go towards the empty space, but this horse looked like he lost his footing at the break.
Yeah, and it's weird. And the 3, the horse that you're going to end up seeing, the horse for Kelly Breen, that horse broke a step slow and didn't take the worst of it. It was the 4, Sir Dream-A-Lot, that actually takes the worst of it, because you see that horse having to steady and you'll see him drop back. Whereas really it's more True Simon. He breaks slowly and he doesn't get as badly interfered with, but he kind of gets the barn door slammed on him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the difference is body contact, too. True Simon kind of missed the heels, had a steady and then go back to the inside, but Sir Dream-A-Lot got really just pounded, and you don't know how much air that takes out of a horse. I thought it was pretty interesting the way True Simon got into the race on the inside, and then Sir Dream-A-Lot, too, to get back into the race, kind of made a run. I think both these horses run much better races than it appears on paper.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason I wanted to show these horses. Here's True Simon, who ends up finishing last, and here's Sir Dream-A-Lot, who's way back after the trouble to start. And as you say, True Simon gets it. Imagine he broke cleanly. This horse has real speed. We're not saying he's winning a maiden special weight, but maybe these horses appear in maiden claiming races going further. And True Simon not only gets back in the race, but does it while making a kind of kamikaze 5-wide move. Both of these horses are the kind of firsters, Richie, that showed enough that in the right spot you might want to bet them the next time.
Absolutely, and you can see the difference there, how wide Sir Dreamalot is. True Simon trying to sneak through on the fence, and that's like Jockey 101 there. You don't try to get through at that spot, especially when the horse on the lead is traveling as well as he was, because a good rider's not going to let you get in there, and the camera angle's such that he might invite you in there and close the door. That's when you got to kind of wait.
Right, and the guy on the front end, I think, has won 2 straight Eclipse Awards, including Javier Castellano.
Yeah, pretty good rider, I guess.
And listen, both these horses are tired, and neither of us are sitting here saying that these are superstars, but you want to see from first-time stars, especially horses, they were 16 to 1, 31 to 1, that had some trouble, that weren't bet. They showed something. They are not complete bums that are going to sit in the back of the field and never gain any ground.
Well, I think that human nature, a lot of people, as they're handicapping and they're not looking at it as in depth as you would, are going to go, oh, the horse finished last, second, move on. Where actually, if you look a little closer, these horses ran okay.
Yeah, right. And the thing is, you're not going to make money. You're not going to bet $30 or $40 horses by finding horses that it's apparent to everybody ran. And the one thing, the best thing you can do, and you do it in Saratoga, Belmont too, but so much at Saratoga and Belmont in the fall, first-time starters, watch them carefully, because if they show you a little bit, they can often show you a lot in their second start.
Well, and if you're not using your race replay center in conjunction with what you're seeing on paper, whether it's sheets or racing form, you're making a big mistake, because you're going to see a lot more.
And the other thing is, the more races you watch, the better you understand the game, because you'll understand the situations that horses get in that are positive and negative, and every horse isn't the same, but you'll start to understand horses that are reacting badly to kickback and horses that are taking kickback okay, and you'll watch in the future and you'll identify situations going forward. And as far as I'm concerned, I know you agree, the most interesting thing about horse racing is actually the horse races.
Yeah, and like you said, how horses react to different situations.
And we'll see some situations, and we'll go on to the Gazelle, which was the 8th race on Saturday's card. And obviously, Condo Commando was able to control, and she was, as she frequently is, the best horse. But we want to talk about 2 horses. One is PUCA, who we felt Manny Franco did a very good job with, and she was taking a little out of her game. And the other is the 4 Wonder Gal, who was making her first start under very tough circumstances. But I think we both agree she showed enough that there's reason to believe she will move forward substantially in her second start.
Yeah, I think Wonder Gal will. I think she needed the race. She was slated to run in a prep race for the Gazelle. That races got canceled that day. She didn't get it. She came into it under works, and I thought she loomed up like she was going to be a serious player, and maybe just got a little bit tired, which she had a right to do. I thought PUCA got a great trip, a great ride by Manny Franco, except that he had to use her to keep Condo Commando honest and to take advantage of his post position.
Yeah, he really did, and I think that Manny played it perfectly. He realized that Jacaranda broke a step slow, and that made it much easier. Now, whether he knew that instinctively or not, he realized they weren't going that fast, and he had his inside position, and he made Condo Commando. He kept her a little honest, and then he let her go, and he eased back on the inside, and he held his position. Not easy things to do, and I think he did them all very, very well in this race. And when PUCA gets into a race like the Kentucky Oaks, or wherever she ends up going forward, it's a long year, there may be more speed, and she can drop back further, and perhaps she can turn the tables on Condo Commando.
With a different setup, you have to think that that's a distinct possibility. I mean, Condo Commando's just loping along on the lead. You know, it's hard to knock Condo Commando, because all she does basically is win. But I understand what people say when she kind of looks like it's getting things her own way all the time. But maybe it's just that she's that talented.
She is, but I want to see it. I really want, and I like her. You know, and I root for her, and she's a New York horse, and Mike Dubb's a New York guy, and you like to see her do well. But as a horse player, I need to see her overcome some adversity before I want to bet her at shorter prices. Manny holds his position on the inside. Wonder Gal makes that move. You can't finish that kind of move, especially against a horse like Condo Commando under these situations. I wish she had held third, but I still think she moves forward.
I do too. I think she moves forward. I still question whether she genuinely wants a mile and an acre. But you know, we'll find out as we go further. We do know one thing: the connections are not against turning a horse back. They had some good success doing it last year.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what they do with her. Do they do a similar thing they did with Sweet Reason and wait for a race like the Acorn, where a mile could be perfect for her? Is there a race in between maybe that fits her very well? Are they? I don't know if she has the points to go to the Kentucky Oaks, so she may not be in there anyway. I know PUCA's going. PUCA is a horse I'll I'll want to use it some way in the Oaks at a big price.
Yeah, and you're going to get a good price on her, and I agree with you. I think the pace of the Oaks and a bigger field are going to suit her much better.
Yeah, and you know what? Condor Commando shows, if nothing else, the value of having speed and talent, because her speed ends up forcing everybody else to have to alter their game to deal with her.
Speed is always dangerous.
It really is, and we wish sometimes everybody realized that. Onward and upwards, the Bayshore, the next race that was run on this card. We want to talk mostly about what happened to Lord Nelson, as well as a couple of other trips. Ready for Rye, the favorite. He didn't run well, but he was victimized right away when he didn't brake sharply. Lord Nelson breaks okay, a little bit off. He has trouble with kickback. And later we'll talk about ACKERET, who just because he was able to come through on the inside last time out doesn't mean he could do it today.
Yeah, his trip didn't work out. And he was having a good trip up to that point. He got to tuck in, save ground. You're going to watch Lord Nelson here. He's going to get in close, but not so close where he had to check. I think the horse overreacted to being in close. And I went back and watched the race.
He's right here. He's in the purple. We'll roll from there. You can see it.
The horse in the San Vicente. When he was outside and he beat Texas Red. Maybe he's just never been in this situation before, and then I think it was compounded when the kickback hit him in the face.
Yeah, he was behind horses in that race, but it was enough separation, as you were explaining to me before we came on. They're just much different surfaces, and this one is a surface, obviously, he didn't deal with well.
Yeah, well the dirt tends to clod up at Santa Anita. There's more clay in it, and you'll get hit with clods, but here you're getting sandblasted, and I just don't think he ever had that before, and he just overreacted to it.
He really did, and Joel was trying to do the right thing to put him into good position behind horses. I'm sure had he had a crystal ball, he would have let him relax and try to drift towards the outside. Now, he's drifted totally out of the race. Ready for Rye is right here. ACKERET is behind. You're going to eventually see Lord Nelson move in the picture. ACKERET, Jose Ortiz was able to make this rail skinny move, and I think he was confident that his horse would go through on the inside, but those holes don't always open up, and it was race riding, and there's Lord Nelson starting to make his run. I got to tell you, I bet Marchand here got a great ride and a great trip. I was lucky. Lord Nelson was best.
Well, I think Lord Nelson was best. And you can see Joe Rosario had to get his horse out of the kickback because he just was not responding positively. So I know a lot of people say, why did he go so wide? Well, the horse wouldn't have ran at all if he kept him inside. I also don't think, let's not discount that March hit the front, and I think he idled a bit. And when he felt Lord Nelson, he went on again. Again, the best horse was Lord Nelson, but let's not discount how March kind of fought for it.
He did. No. I'm not. Listen, there's people going to tell you that Lord Nelson would have won by 4 lengths. He wouldn't have won by 4 lengths. It's not always the same situation as we show ACKERET down the inside. And this is a case where you could say, yeah, you had a path. He's got a path. But is a path enough to try to come through a whole lot of horses? Because the 2 comes over and then everybody closes the door.
Well, and he had already kind of stymied his momentum at that point, and then the other horses came over. So any wiggle room that he had was already taken away, and basically he was eliminated at that point. And you could see Jose Ortiz, well, we got unlucky, it's over, and he kind of galloped him home.
Yeah, and he wasn't winning the race anyway, but he did have legitimate trouble in there. An interesting race, and kickback is an interesting question. I was talking about it some of the other day. I feel like horses learn to deal with kickback over time. I mean, not that you want to be in that situation,
right.
But if Lord Nelson was on the same track, they ran the race a month later, is it possible he would deal with it a little bit better?
Well, I think he would. Most horses do, like you said. I would say probably 19 out of 20 horses that react negatively to kickback the first time they experience it. And as far as I'm concerned, this was the first time Lord Nelson experienced this kind of kickback. They'll probably understand the second time. But there's always that 1 in 20 that will just never tolerate it. And I personally think he will, because he looked like he did settle down after a little while, although he was not running through it. At least he wasn't climbing as much. And that's the key. You watch how much they climb as opposed to how much they'll run through it.
And this is something that one of the things that you taught me years ago about watching races. I remember talking to you about horses, because originally when I started watching races, I thought, well, the shortest way to the winner's circle is staying on the inside.
Sure.
But then I watched a lot of horses that were trying to make inside moves, and they'd start spinning their wheels and go backwards. And I asked you, I said, what am I missing here? And you explained to me about kickback, and you talked about horses. And it's not always just kickback, horses being intimidated towards the inside. There's a lot going on. But that's one of the first race discussions that I ever had with you, and it's something that stuck with me my entire life of watching races.
Well, it's interesting, too, though. You see, that's why saving ground on the grass becomes so important, because they're not having to deal with the kickback, and horses will tend to go through spots that you might not see them go through on the dirt.
But they still want to go to the outside when they make that move, because because
I would
that's
say
the
most
nature of the
horses.
animals that they are. It's
Yeah.
more not about kickback.
Well, and I agree with that, and I think the next horse we're going to look at is a prime example of a horse that's just happier outside.
Well, the Big Beast is named the Big Beast for a reason, and I thought of all of the favorites, he was the one that really seemed to have maybe run better than it looks, and it wasn't that he necessarily put in a poor effort. The Big Beast is hampered by the fact that he's such a big horse, and it seems like in retrospect, he's got to go, he's got to create separation so he can get himself out in the clear, and this is what they learned from this race, and that's okay.
Well, yeah, I mean, you go back to his King's Bishop last year. When he got to the outside the clear, he went on and ran on. I think he's uncomfortable. You're going to see he's going to climb a little bit in here from the kickback. So it tells you the kickback was a little bit severe on Saturday. And the wind. And now he's kind of in a tough position. I think, obviously, the way the race set up, he needed to get outside, and there just wasn't that possibility at this point.
Yeah, and it just seems like he sulks a little bit. Like, he's like, I'm just not happy. I'm not a happy horse in here, and he's dropping back because he'll get him out in the clear eventually, but he just doesn't seem to come with that big run, and he's left with a little bit much to do. And I have something I want to talk to you after we show this race about big horses and being behind horses. At this point, he's settling him. I just think the Big Beast is not happy.
No, he's not, and you can just look at the horse's expression. His ears are pinned. He's basically, his demeanor is a horse that's not happy. And you could see Javier was like, I got to get him in the clear, and he was hoping he'd kick on. But, these are good horses in front of him. And he finally, to me, gets running more late. Like, it took him a little while to shake off that feeling that he had being uncomfortable, and finally stopped being mad and then started to run on.
Yeah, I'm going to give him a legitimate excuse in here. I thought he was overbet. It wasn't that he was my pick or anything.
Sure.
But I can't make excuses for the other horses in this race. Palace was coming off a layoff, fine. But of the favorites, he was the one that had the excuse.
My question, and I agree about all of this with the kickback and how he looked uncomfortable, and knowing horses and big horses, how they do get claustrophobic. I mean, think about a big person in a coach seat on an airline. They're not going to be as comfortable as someone that's smaller. It's just
I think
natural.
they're sitting next to me and they're leaning all over
they're
me.
taking your armrest. But my question to you is there a possibility, as big as the Big Beast was last year and is this year, that he didn't mature any more than he was last year?
That's a very, very interesting question. It might be a good question to ask trainer Tony Dutrow. And we'll find out going further, because there's no reason they're not going to be running in big races going forward. Dortmund is a big horse.
Yeah.
He has been able to control races and been on the front end. I think one of the reasons Bob Baffert's happy he's in the front end, because A, he can do it and he
Sure.
can handle it because of his cruising speed. What happens in the Derby when he's not in that situation and they try to rate him and he gets among horses? Is he going to be a horse that'll have a similar situation, especially without that much experience?
It's a great question. I think he's fast enough that he can get his position and maybe create some separation from himself and be in the clear. He has shown when firing line put him in close.
Yeah, true.
Which race was San Felipe?
The Robert Lewis.
The Robert Lewis. That he fought back even when a lot of other horses might have got uncomfortable. So I tend to think mentally he's a little bit tougher than maybe the Big Beast is.
No, we'll see what happens. A lot of good racing coming up, and we can always use your help. It's trips and traps at NYRANK.com.